Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 186.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because today we're going to talk about something that I think is absolutely important. Many of you out there, you want to do business by referral, but you know, the challenge with that is if they don't know what they're going to get, if they don't know why you're different, if they don't know who you are, if your customer has no clue on how to refer people to you and what their friends are going to get, it makes it very, very challenging to do just that very thing. And where am I going with all this? What I'm really saying is, if I said to you, hey, go to McDonald's, you know what you're going to get there. They're known for certain things. If I said to you, hey, go to Nordstrom, you know, we all love Nordies, especially me, right? They have my shoe size. See, I know that. But the point is, when you go there, you know what you're going to get. Each of these companies have what you would easily call a brand, and you know what they stand for. Today's guest, as I said, is going to help you and I be able to do that. But who is today's guest? Well, it's Dorie Clark. She's an adjunct professor of business and administration at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business and the author of Reinventing You, but more importantly, Stand Out, which is the new book. She's a former presidential campaign spokeswoman. She's a frequent contributor to the Harvard Business Review, Time, Entrepreneur, and recognized as a branding expert by the Associated Press. Here's the thing. Do you think companies like Google, Microsoft, Yale University, Fidelity, and the World Bank have anything to do and care about their own brand? The point is if she can help them with their marketing, their strategy, their branding, she can help us. And that's exactly why I'm excited for her to be here and introduce herself to you and give us those tips that are going to help us differentiate ourselves as those small business owners and entrepreneurs who have something of value to offer. So help me welcome Dorie Clark. Dorie, you there?
I sure am. Hey, Jay.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Now, you know, I can't mention the words Duke University and not mention basketball. So tell me you at least went to one of the games.
You know, I didn't this year. I actually live in New York City, so I'm not around too much on campus. But it was certainly exciting for overall morale, for sure.
No doubt, no doubt. I can only imagine what that would have been like to be there at that moment in time. But that's okay. This isn't about basketball. This is about business anyway. Now, one of the things I like to do is I tend to ask the same question over and over again, especially at the beginning. And you don't know what that question is, but most people who are listening are okay, which could make you a little nervous, but don't worry about it. It's good. Here's the thing. I look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. And what I mean by that is a superhero, you know, occasionally they get dressed up. They wear a mask, sometimes a cape, and they use their special abilities to go around and help other people with their special skills and improve their life. And I think entrepreneurs do the same thing. However, before Superman was super and Spidey was climbing walls, they were just normal individuals in their own realms. So I guess they each have an origin story. So before you professor of business administration, before you had clients and like Google, Microsoft, Yale, and helping them, before you were this branding expert, what we would like to know is, who is Dorie Clark?
Well, like Superman, I have incredibly thick glasses. That's one thing.
Okay, that's a good start.
Yeah, fortunately, contact lenses do most of the trick. But yeah, I've definitely got my Clark Kent glasses at night that I wear. But yeah, my background, so I actually am originally from North Carolina, land of Duke, and grew up in a really small town, and wanted to get out of it as soon as I possibly could, because I just I hated it. It was just a really stultifying place for me. So I finagled my way to go to college early. So I left high school early, went to college, and did things that probably some people wouldn't necessarily think of as being the most logical training for someone later to work in business. But it all made sense to me, which is that I was a philosophy major as an undergrad, and I have a master's degree in theology. And I wasn't really sure where it was heading precisely. I thought I might have a career in academia, but I was really interested in just learning about life and learning about culture. And so I managed to have a lot of different jobs early on. I was a political reporter, and you mentioned I was a spokesperson on a gubernatorial campaign and a presidential campaign. I ran a bicycling advocacy nonprofit for a couple of years. And then for the past 9 years, I have had my own consulting business where I write and speak and teach.
Interesting. It's the phrase Renaissance woman comes to mind at this moment, when you just kind of stick your nose in whatever you feel interested about. It seems like at this particular moment. That you're right. That did not sound like the typical path for business under any stretch of the imagination. But what I find interesting about something that you said is, well, one, you don't know this. I'm actually from Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, North Carolina myself, and I had to get out of there too. But you left high school early. That says that you have an ultra high sense of motivation in some way, shape, or form. Curious to where that comes from.
Yeah, it's a good question. And we probably grew up like a stone's throw away, because I lived on the other side of Fort Bragg, Jay. I was from Pinehurst. So
That's
yeah.
pretty funny.
Yeah.
That would be funny. We could talk more later. That would be really weird if we we were right there at the same time.
Absolutely. But yeah, so I honestly am not entirely sure where my sense of professional motivation comes from. I mean, a big motivation for me in terms of wanting to just get out of that part of North Carolina, which I think you probably have a better sense of the cultural mores there than most. But I was growing up there, and I was this gay teenager, and I thought, wow, this is not the place for me. So that was that was a big driver. I thought, all right, there's going to be some better places, and I'm going to find them. So that was one factor for me. But overall, I think from the time that I was young, I felt a little bit of, you could say, a calling, or just a sense that that it was that I had the ability to do big things, and I had the responsibility to do big things. And so I just really felt like that was it wasn't really a debatable thing. I just felt like that was my path, and that I needed to make that happen.
Indeed. But you brought up something just then that I think is key and very, very germane to the conversation. You said ability and responsibility. I think many entrepreneurs have that feeling of like, I could do something, but you also felt a responsibility to use those gifts into the marketplace.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things where you can sort of harken back to all these Bobby Kennedy quotes or whatever, that to whom much is given, much is acquired. And yeah, and I think that to a certain extent, we've lost a little bit of our civic culture in America, which I would like to bring back. I mean, one drum that I like to beat, you hear a lot in business circles about people, it's sort of the fashionable thing to say, oh, don't read the paper. The paper is just depressing. That brings you down. Why listen to the news? If it's important enough, you'll hear about it somehow. And yes, it's true. If there's like an earthquake in your town, I'm sure you'll feel it, or someone will tell you to get out of the building or something. But I actually think that there is value to the news. I mean, as a former reporter, and as someone who has been involved in politics, yes, of course, certain genres of news are meant to be just sort of pop celebrity coverage. But I mean, I'm not talking about People magazine. I'm talking about, the New York Times or whatever. I'm talking about the fact that it is important for us to be citizens and being aware of the world around us and what's happening in it, and trying to make a contribution in whatever fashion we can. I think is a really important thing for us as individuals, and also as part of our society. It's part of being an American, I think.
Well, and I think what you're really saying is people should just care.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's
Yeah,
we just should care. And you're like, hey, I care, so this is why I do all of these things, and why don't you care anymore? And I feel you. And also at the same time, I believe very strongly that entrepreneurs, us, we happen to care. We care about certain things a little bit more than others, which is why we take on the challenge of, developing products or services that are supposed to fix one specific small little problem that we can kind of handle, because we unfortunately can't solve everything. So with that being the case, why branding? Why care about marketing and branding in the first place? Why should anyone listening, considering a business, care about that?
Well, I actually think that it's pretty foundational. That branding is really important, because if for so many people, because this is largely what has been taught for a long time, but so many people believe just concentrate on your work, just do your work, and good things will happen. All you need to do
hold
is
on.
work hard.
You mean that doesn't work? Come on, you're bursting my bubble. All right, keep going.
I
keep
know.
going.
Sorry, man. But the truth is, we live now in a culture and a time that is so much busier and so much more frenetic than anything that our parents or our grandparents experienced. We're getting hundreds of emails a day. We're getting pinged all the time on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. And as a result of this deluge, this onslaught, people are not paying that close attention to you. And as a result, if we just assume, oh, if I work hard enough, long enough, good things will happen. Well, you know what? You could be waiting forever. And one of the reasons that I wrote Stand Out is that for me, I actually consider it a really sad thing and a huge waste for people's talents and best ideas to go unrecognized, to go undiscovered. And there are so many people out there that have great ideas, that really have a genuine contribution that they could be making. But if they don't understand the importance of spreading the word about it, if they don't know how to crack the code of getting noticed, the impact that they're going to have is zero. And to me, that is depressing. And that's actually the problem that I want to solve. I would like the best ideas to get out there, and I would like people to understand how they can do that better.
You bring up two interesting things. One, I'd like to say I wish I only got 100 emails a day. But secondly, the idea of being able to put yourself out there in such a way so that you can be found. I agree with you. So I grew up around some talented individuals, and I always wondered, what on earth am I going to contribute? Because I'm not them. I can't do that. And, so some people's talents, they're just really clear. It's obvious, and everybody talks about it. And it took me a while to find, where's my genius going to come out from? And then now we're on this journey of, hey, let's tell people about it. How does one find those latent talents that they may have yet discovered, and more importantly, package them in such a way that people want to consume them?
Yeah, so it's a really great question. I mean, I think that for a lot of people, people find themselves at different places along the spectrum. Sometimes, people will have, some sort of talent or gift that it just sort of seeps out around the edges. If there's something that your friends are always commenting on, or something that you're always getting sort of disproportionately recognized for, that's probably the place you should look. I mean, I was literally talking to somebody today who was talking about her mother and how her mother had this beautiful voice, and in the community that they grew up in, which was in Eastern Europe, anytime there was a wedding, anytime there was a funeral, always they would ask this woman's mother to perform at it, because people in the community knew that was her thing. She was amazing at it. And so if you have things, if people are constantly asking you for advice about this, or they want you to do that, that's a place where you should look and say, oh, maybe there's something here. The people have spoken, as it were. But I think for a lot of people, it may be more the form that they have this interest, this sort of nascent interest, but they know in a broad sense, like, oh, I'm interested in technology, or, oh, I'm interested in fashion, or something like that. But they don't really know how they can, fit their way into it. They don't know what they can contribute that's different. They know they like it, but they don't really know, like, oh, could I contribute something different? And one of the most important things that I learned in the course of researching Stand Out, for which I interviewed about 50 top thought leaders in different fields, is that it really is a myth that people have this, they have this fully formed crystalline idea, and then, they immediately go out and start spreading it. I mean, most often what happens is that someone has an interest that's just sort of a general interest, like, oh, this is cool. I'm curious about this. They start mucking around with it. Literally, they just start experimenting. They start doing small things. They start exploring it. And it's in the course of exploring it that they discover what their idea is. And I think that's really important, because some people never even try because they say, oh, well, I just don't have an idea. But the truth is, you're probably not going to have the idea unless you get started.
Well, Dorie, you have no idea how I hope everybody heard that. And in fact, you should hit the rewind button and play that part again. Do you know how many people I run into who tell me, Jay, I just want to make sure I understand all the angles before I get started on anything. And here you are saying the exact opposite. You won't figure it out. You just got to get started and kind of let it evolve at the end of the day. Here's a question. So you said there was 50 people you interviewed for the book?
Yes.
Of those 50, how many had a perfect plan, and that perfect plan happened the way they designed it and is exactly what they're still doing?
Oh, yeah, like 0.
Exactly. That's kind of I had a feeling you were going to say that. I didn't even need to know. Who were some of the individuals that you were able to gain access to and interview in this book?
So I tried to have a diversity of professions so that I could begin to look at how to become a recognized expert in a lot of different fields. What are the commonalities? So I interviewed people from genomics and from real estate and from urban planning and from bicycle advocacy and all these different things. But the place that I went the deepest, especially because this is my area of interest these days, is talking with business thinkers. And so these are folks that some of your listeners may be familiar with. But I got to talk with some really cool people like Seth Godin, a well-known marketing expert, Daniel Pink, New York Times bestselling author of books like Drive and To Sell Is Human, David Allen, who's famous for his Getting Things Done productivity methodology, Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence. It was the classic business book of the 1980s, sold more than 2 million copies. Robert Cialdini, who is the world's most famous thinker on influence and persuasion. So a lot of those folks, it was really great to get to speak with them.
Okay, you guys know me. You I'm not going to tell you, but those are probably all books if you haven't read any of the books by any of those people, especially Robert Cialdini, especially Seth Godin, and especially David Allen, go make that happen, because a lot of what you're trying to get done is covered, and they've covered it in some way, shape, or form. Now, specifically, though, as it relates to standing out, what would you say? Like, do you have, what is Dorie's top 10 list of things that entrepreneurs do absolutely backwards that prevent them from standing out?
Yeah, there's a lot of places that entrepreneurs fall down for sure. Fundamentally, what I discovered, at the highest level of this is that if you are going to become a recognized expert in your field, you need to do 2 things more than anything else. The first is that you need to have some kind of an idea that you are associated with. For Robert Cialdini, it's persuasion. For Daniel Pink, it's about motivation and what motivates people in the workforce. For David Allen, it's productivity. But you have to be known for something. You have to make sure there's a there. The second part, equally important, is spreading that message, spreading the word about it. And really what that takes, I discovered, is it's a 3-step process for beginning to build a following around your idea. And very briefly, it's number 1, building your network. So it's getting a sort of tight-knit group of people around you who are sort of a sounding board for you. They're people you trust their judgment. They can give you honest feedback about how to make your ideas better and give you early support for your idea. Number 2 is building your audience. So that's where you really start to speak up publicly about your idea. Maybe it's blogging, or it's doing webinars or giving speeches or something, but it's getting your idea out. And third, and finally, it's about building your community. So once you have got a sufficient number of people who, your audience, who's interested in your idea, you want then to be able to help give them opportunities to connect to each other so that you can turn them into evangelists for your idea and help it go viral.
Interesting. And I'm just going to take a stab and say that, based upon everything that we have available to us today, this can be applied at every level, whether someone wants to, have the next $100 million company, or they just want their own small, $500,000 business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there's so many opportunities with this. I mean, even if someone works inside a company, if they have an idea that they really believe in, you want to follow that process of, before you float the idea publicly, you want to have a sort of focus group of people that you trust to say, is this a good idea? Okay, yeah, this will work in our company. Then you begin talking about it, and then you start to get other people bought in and engaged. And before long, people in the company say, oh yeah, this is really great. I mean, it can work in that setting, and it can work if you want to create the next Uber.
I love Uber everywhere I go.
Yes,
I really do.
It is fantastic.
I remember the first time I used it in Phoenix. I was in Phoenix, and I was at obviously a real estate related event, and I just called it. I was like, from my phone. I didn't need money, and I just walked out of I remember I walked out of the restaurant right into the car. I'm like, this is cool. This is the best thing ever. Anyway,
it's pretty darn cool.
So here's my I guess my question becomes is, if I'm the small business person, and maybe I've been in business for a little while, I don't know if I have an idea that I'm associated with. What does that mean? What's the process to finding what that might be?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of different ways that you can do this. What I discovered in the course of writing Stand Out is that fundamentally there's 5 major strategies that people can use. You definitely don't have to do all of these. This is more of kind of a buffet where you can pick the thing that seems the most applicable to you and your circumstances. But really briefly, what I discovered in terms of how people find their breakthrough idea, number one possibility is to do a niche strategy where you go really deep in a particular, facet of your field or profession, and then you can expand out from there. But it's smart because you're able more quickly to establish yourself as an expert since there's less competition in that particular vertical. Number 2, it's mixing disciplines. A really good way to get known is if you do sort of a mashup of different ideas. So, I mean, for instance, Eric Ries, who some of your listeners may know, he's the author of The Lean Startup. He took things that on the surface you might not necessarily think of as being compatible. He took startups and the lean methodology, which was developed as a strategy by Toyota to help improve automotive manufacturing. I mean, those things seem not related, but he mashed them together and created something very new and very helpful, which created its own new idea. Number 3 is doing original research. And basically what I mean by this is that it's really easy for people to have opinions about things. Everybody has an opinion. But if you are somebody who is contributing new research, this doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be scientific research. It could be doing reviews. It could be doing interviews. It could be doing case studies. But something that actually has a lot of time and thought into it, that can establish you as an expert and really get you known for something. Number 4 is tackling an important enough idea. And really what I mean by this is that if you are picking a subject to focus on that enough people care about, everybody talks about Elon Musk as this sort of paradigmatic, brilliant entrepreneur. Well, part of it is because he picked electric cars and solar power and space travel. I mean, those are things that people are fundamentally interested in. And
Right.
those are worthy challenges. And so people are excited about that. You can have a breakthrough idea because people are following that closely. They love that. And 5th and finally, it's what I call creating a framework. And basically what this is taking a look from a 30,000 foot perspective at your field and beginning to say, you know what, are there sort of foundational principles for this field that haven't been articulated? Is there a kind of framework that I can put around it that would help people understand things better? And so, as one example, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, with her 5 stages of grief, this is something that's really critical, foundational. Clearly, people had been experiencing grief for as long as humans have existed, but it wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't until 40 years ago that she created this, and then people said, "Oh, you're right. It does work like that." And if you can do that for your field, which really just requires asking the right questions and creating a sort of framing device, that can be a big breakthrough.
Interesting. And the thing is with those ideas, especially that framework one, it's literally just looking at something that already exists in a completely different way, asking a few questions that someone may not have asked already.
Precisely.
Yeah, I kind of like it. I like it. So you said something that was key towards the beginning. You said a brand was foundational. That says to me, walking is, an activity, necessary for daily living. You got to know how to eat. Hopefully you can breathe. All of these things that's clearly foundational for life, which says to me, without them, you're dead. So when you say foundational, it communicates to me that failing to do these things means my business is, in all instances, dead.
Okay. Hey. You've been listening for a while. Hopefully you've caught a number of the previous episodes. If not, start at number 1, but jump up to some of the more current ones, obviously. We have been having something special for you guys. If you go over to learninvestingnow.com, for those of you outside the U.S., go over to learninvestingnow.com. I know you heard it at the beginning, but we've changed it, and we are giving you a free copy of my book, Cashflow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. So you get a free electronic copy. Thank you, podcast listeners. We're kind of excited about you. For those of you in the U.S., and if you're not near a computer right now, here's a simple way for you to go do it. Send a text message over to 72000. That's 72,000. The keyword is book, BOOK, and I'll email it to you there as well. Now, I'm sure as you're listening to Dorie, you're ready to go out there, get started, take on the world, and become that super person who has a lot to offer in developing your own cash flow and business. So let's get back to it.
Yeah, I think that's largely true, because if we actually just peel back the definition of brand, what are we talking about? Fundamentally, a personal brand is a synonym for your reputation. That is all it is. It's what do people think of you? And, sometimes people rebel against the phrase personal brand. They don't like it. They think it connotes some kind of phoniness or whatever. But, really we're talking about your reputation. And I think people would probably feel differently about it if you substituted that out and then they said the same things like, why do I have to have a reputation? I don't care what my reputation is. It sounds silly on the surface. As humans, what determines everything? You could be the best in your field, you could be the best at anything, but if the world looks at you and says, I don't care. You know what? You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get any clients. You're not going to be able to do the things you want to do and the things you know you can do. So getting right with your reputation and making sure that it reflects how you would wish to be seen, I think that really is foundational.
Well, agreed, but you got to admit, I mean, managing that today, I mean, with the advent of Twitter being the news channel for many, that could be a challenge to do, simply because there's so many ways people can interact with your brand and who you are, and whatever you put up there kind of stays forever.
It's true. It's true. I mean, there's there's benefits to that, of course, and there's also serious downsides. So people have to be mindful. I mean, on the plus side, there's benefits that can accrue over time. I mean, I know, for instance, if someone starts investing in a positive way, I mean, sort of like, whatever, putting $10 a week aside, into your savings account, you can sort of think of it the same way with your online reputation. So, for instance, there's blog posts that I've written, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and there are things that still come up when there's search results. And because they're things that, I'm still proud of, that's a great thing. It's really nice that those things years later are still driving people to me, driving people to my website, etc. I feel like that's a victory. But yeah, I mean, similarly, if somebody makes, if they make a mistake and something negative about them appears online, or maybe they've it's not even an error per se, but if they decide they want to change their brand rather dramatically, then it can be a handicap. I write a lot and do some executive ed teaching around the question of online reputation, and really the only answer for people, it's kind of to fight fire with fire, which is that if you don't like what is out there about you online, you need to take control of it by creating more of the content you do want and more of the content you do like. And if you do that, you can win the battle.
You know what's really funny about that is that that's pretty much what drove me to start producing content. That was one of the factors. Is I found out people were. I didn't know this. I didn't actually care. If people were, they was like, "Hey, I found you on YouTube. I looked you up on YouTube." I was like, "I don't have anything on YouTube. What did you see?" And then I started learning that was common, that people were Googling me and looking things up. And I'm just like, well, I guess we have to combat this. And a few years ago, it was pretty funny. If you typed in my name, the only thing that came up, and I wish I was kidding, Dorie, but I'm not. The only thing that came up was either convicted criminals or bald white men.
Oh, geez.
I'm like, oh, gosh. I didn't even come up in the search results for my own name. It was pretty bad. Now today, if you type in, Jay Massey, you're gonna see me, which is great. It was pretty interesting because the stuff is out there and we've got to do it. So let's say I'm the brand new entrepreneur. I like a lot of what you're saying, but this sounds like a lot of work, and it's not exactly tied directly to revenue. So really, is it that essential? Do I have to do it? Because that's what I know somebody's thinking it. So I better ask you before they email me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think there's a couple of points. One is that I'm certainly not saying that everybody has to immediately dive in and become, the equivalent of a social media consultant. I mean, no individual business owner and no individual human being needs to be on 11 social platforms or something like that. Wow. That would be ridiculous. I'm not. I mean, there's platforms I'm not on. I don't do Pinterest. I don't think it's really relevant to me professionally. I mean, I need to know about Pinterest, but I don't need to spend a lot of time on it. So you just have to make choices about what's useful. But do you need to be on something? Yeah, you do. And I think the reason why that is, I mean, your story is very telling. If there's nothing about you online, I mean, it means that there's a lot of potential for other people to get the wrong impression because, in the past they might have Googled you and said, "Oh yeah, you must be the, the criminal Jay Massey or whatever." Yeah, and you don't want that. You want you to be findable. The other thing is that we are absolutely entering the era where just by dint of living, people have some kind of a digital footprint. And if you don't have one, people think it's weird. They think it's fishy. And
Right.
I mean, I was consulting for a company, and they were in the process of hiring a marketing director. And this was now, I think, about 5 years ago. So I mean, even then, it was sort of early days. But this guy, he had this combination of he had been working abroad the last few years, and B, there was really like nothing about him online. And they liked him, they wanted to hire him, but it made them so suspicious. They thought, what is up? Like, why is there nothing here? They actually, they got really concerned toward the end that he was fabricating his resume. And so they did end up hiring him, but it delayed the process by multiple weeks because they decided that they needed to call up and talk to multiple new references just to make sure, because it was so weird they couldn't find stuff about him.
That's funny. You don't have a Facebook account? Are you okay? That's pretty funny. I've actually run into one millennial who didn't have a Facebook account, and I remember the feeling like, why are you all right? Is this a religious thing? Why don't you have a Facebook account? I don't understand.
Right.
But so I get what you're saying. It's pretty odd. It's like almost asking somebody today, you don't have a microwave, a cell phone. I mean, all of these things that are now commonplace, to not have them is more weird than actually having them when they first came out and onto the scene. Now, you mentioned that you were consulting, with the company. Give us an idea of, like, in your world, what does the typical perfect person come to you? How do they go, you know what? I need Dorie. What is that progress? What goes through their mind that leads to Dorie can help me, or you're the solution?
Sure, yeah. So really the sort of presenting symptom, you could say, for for
Right.
people hiring me, it would be two things. It's a little bit different for companies versus individuals. For a company, generally they know that they need to raise their profile. They want to become established as thought leaders in their market, but they're not quite sure how to do it because there's just such a surfeit of options now in terms of marketing. And you could spend your time and your money in a million different ways. And so typically they have their own marketing team and apparatus, but they want someone to come in from the outside to take a look at what they're doing now and make strategic recommendations about the best way to optimize their marketing. In particular, if they're interested in doing things around, content creation or other ways to establish themselves as really the go-to experts in their niche. For individuals, it's sort of a similar thing. I do some high-level coaching for executives and entrepreneurs, and it's about this question of, how do you build up your own platform? How do you build up your brand as a recognized authority in your field? Sometimes it's people who want to write a book and know they need to do that in order to get a contract, or they want to help in trying to figure out how to build a following in advance of a book being launched, or maybe they have a consulting business or something like that.
Interesting. Got it. Okay. Got it. Makes perfect sense. So here's the question. I think every, superhero has that moment where they realize, their unique and special skills, but they still have to make the choice that I'm going to offer my unique and special skill to the world. This is a choice that you yourself had to make. And occasionally, once we get to that realization that we have this ability, before we are willing to accept the responsibility of putting it out there, we can tend to experience a varied, wide range of emotions. And some of those emotions can prevent many people to say, you know what, it's just not that important. The question is what got you to go past your superhero moment and really say, you know what, this is me, this is who I am, especially after doing so many varied things, to finally say, you know what, I'm going to offer this. And you know what, if it works, great. If it doesn't, great. but this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Well, for me, I just I always felt a degree of certainty that I felt like I had a baseline level of ability where if I applied myself to something that I would be successful. And I certainly had a lot of setbacks early on.
You too?
I
Really? No.
That's right. It's all true. I mean, the sort of foundational thing for me in writing my book, Reinventing You, the reason I reinvented myself so many times, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I tried to become an academic, and then I got turned down by all the doctoral programs that I applied to. I tried to be a newspaper reporter, and I got laid off from my job. I worked in politics, and all my candidates lost. So it took a while for me to find my sweet spot. But I always just felt like that I knew that I could make a difference, and it was annoying to me. I mean, frankly, one of my sort of pieces of advice, which clearly people can take this to extremes, but I think it's perhaps especially for women, but for people in general, I think it's useful. I'll call it blame out rather than blame in. And what I mean by that is a lot of people see a setback and they think, oh, well, I guess I lost my job because I'm not good enough, or, whatever. Oh, I guess they, they looked at my application and everyone else's was better. And so I just didn't measure up. And it's like, no, that's actually not helpful. Yes, listen to feedback if you're getting it from people you trust, and listen to feedback, if you're getting it repeatedly. But too many people get negative feedback and then they just wilt at the first, at the first glimpse of it. What I think you need to do instead is to say, those people are dumb. I don't understand why they didn't see what I have to offer, but screw them. And that's
Right.
really what I've been trying to do.
Right. No wilting. This is a no wilting zone. That's what we got to get a sign and a T-shirt now.
I like it.
No wilting. There you go. There's the next book right there. Boom. No
yes,
wilting.
we get the catchphrase. Everything else just comes easily after that.
Absolutely. Now you interview 50 different entrepreneurs. Tell me how you didn't wilt, and go for it from there. Anyway, I'm just messing with you. Although kind of not really. It would actually be interesting. Where's does that come from though? I mean, do you think, all right, if I'm listening to you and I go, man, yep, I totally wilted again. How do I develop that if I don't have it? Or is it just born with it and either I've got it or I don't?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just about everything is learnable, honestly. I mean, I feel like the whole idea that you are or you aren't something, I mean, perhaps with the exception of like your height.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the the most interesting research when we talk about breakthrough ideas. This is actually not someone that I profiled in my book, although I certainly could have. Is a woman named Carol Dweck, who's a psychologist at Stanford, and her research into learning and learning patterns, really incredibly influential. And she talked her big idea that she's known for is about the distinction between a learning mindset and a fixed mindset. And it turns out that if you have a learning mindset where you feel like, what, all right, I didn't do well on that test, but I can learn, next time I'll study harder, or next time I'll do better. Those people, as you might imagine, over time are a lot more successful than the people who have a fixed mindset where it's that, oh, you're either smart or you're not. And if you do badly on a test, then that just proves you're not smart. And so they get their egos crushed. And so as a result, they get into these really maladaptive behaviors where they do things like, oh, they don't even try, or they sort of like throw it so that they never are confronted one way or another with what they think would be evidence that they're not actually smart. That creates a lot of problems for people in life. And so I think if more people adopted a learning mindset about almost anything, we would be better off. Because for sure, are some things more learnable than others? I mean, yeah, probably. But if you just believe fundamentally you are or you aren't, well, you're going to make zero progress.
Yeah. And now we have the answer to the question of, are entrepreneurs born or made? See, it's very, very clear. Everybody, every one of you can make it happen. And that's the part that I love. You may not have been the one selling candy in the second grade, but that doesn't mean that you can't become the next great Elon Musk, since we've used him in this particular episode before. Here's the question. There's a number of people who are listening to you right now, and I know they have varying levels of excitement, and some of them like, oh my God, Dorie can totally help me. What's the best way for any of us to catch up with you in the future, figure out more of, how do we start this journey and begin to improve ourselves, our business, our brand?
Well, one of the things that your listeners might be interested in, Jay, is that I actually created a free workbook that is based off of Stand Out. It's a 42-page workbook that literally just walks people through the process of how to create their own breakthrough ideas and build a following around them. And folks can get that for free on my website, dorieclark.com, which is DORIECLARK.com. And I hope that might just start getting the wheels turning to think about how to apply the ideas to themselves. And I also have about 500 free articles available on the website as well.
Only 500?
I'm working on it.
I mean, I thought we were going to be an overachiever here. Come on. I like it. I like it a lot. Okay. So last question here. Let's pretend that someone right now is standing outside the superhero outfit store and going, you know what? I think I'm ready. I want to, maybe I should, get a mask, some tights. They're not sure in the colors yet, maybe, but that's okay. And then, they still haven't decided cape or no cape, but the question becomes in their mind, I could go buy the outfit and dress up on the outside, but on the inside, they still have that nagging, I don't know, maybe not. What would you say to that person who's in that space right now?
Yeah, well, I'm a little biased, but clearly I think they should go for it.
You and every other guest that I've asked that to has been absolutely biased and said something similar.
That's right. Because, honestly, the way that I think about these issues, about standing out, about, really developing your brand and running with it, is that some people might consider it risky. It's risky. You hear about things. There's a saying in Australia and some other parts of the world where they call it the tall poppy syndrome, which seems to be a well-known cultural phenomenon there. Thankfully, less so in the U.S. But the tall poppy syndrome is where, whichever it's dangerous to be the tall poppy, i.e., the flower that stands out, because that's the one that gets chopped down the first. Because no one likes somebody who's standing out. So some people might perceive a degree of risk, but honestly, I actually think that there is a lot of risk in not standing out, because the era that we are entering is an incredibly competitive global marketplace, and there is a race to the bottom. There's always going to be someone who's willing to do the job cheaper, and if you posit yourself as just an average, interchangeable person, that might have flown a while ago. It is not going to fly now because, okay, why should I pay you 10 times what somebody in Bangladesh can do it for? There's just not a good reason. The only reason to pay you what you're worth is if you give people a clear reason that you're known for having amazing quality, or you're known for having amazing ideas, or you're known for having a unique take on something. That's the reason to pay money to work with you and not somebody else. And I think that that's something that increasingly people need to be aware of.
Agreed, 100%. It's otherwise you're treated like a commodity, and what difference does it make? I always think about that, like Staples and Office Depot. What's the difference between those two stores?
Yeah.
I still have not been able to answer that question. And I don't really care which one I go to. Just, who's got the item I'm looking for today and which one am I closest to? That's literally all it comes down to for me. But we don't want to be that. We want to be the store that people go to. Well, I definitely want to say I appreciate you taking the time to invest here with us at the Cashflow Diary.
Thank you so much. It's awesome talking with you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? Well, you got more books recommended to you in this particular episode than we've had in a while. So you can just go back and get all of them, read them all, and I'll see you in about 2 years when you're done. Or you can just go pick up a copy of Stand Out, because it'll probably help you to make sure that you are doing the things that are correct and necessary in the right sequence and order. And go get that 42-page Stand Out assessment, because you know what? You need to know what's going to help you differentiate yourself in the marketplace. And at the end of the day, you don't want to be a commodity. Guys, gals, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.